Good morning, ma'am. Uh, Tenwari, ma'am, your screen is visible.
So thank you. Shall I start or how is it? What is it? Yeah.
Ma'am, we will start with your introduction and then you can share your screen, ma'am.
Okay. I'll just
Yes, ma'am.
close. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to day 5 of the 7-day National Level Professional Development Program on IMMERGOGY 2026, Researcher Cognition and Knowledge Structure, Strengthening Academic Integrity in Research, organized by SRM Arts and Science College. It is an immense pleasure to welcome our respected Principal, Dr. R. Vasudevaraj, Vice Principal of Admin and Academics, our honored guest, respected heads of all the departments, all the faculty members, and all the enthusiastic participants joining us today. Today's session focuses on a truly vital theme: knowledge structures and scholarly architecture. The formulation of a problem is often more essential than its solution. This quote by Albert Einstein sets the perfect tone for today's session. Now, I would like to invite Dr. K. Abhirami, Assistant Professor, Department of Microbiology, to formally introduce our distinguished resource person, Professor M. Tenmuri, Professor in Finance, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon to everyone present here. It's my great privilege to extend a warm and respectful welcome to our distinguished chief guest for day 5 of 7-day national level professional development program on IMMERGOGY 26. IMMERGOGY 26 centered on researcher cognition and a knowledge structure, strengthening academic integrity and ethical in an intellectual rigorous research. Today, the theme knowledge structure and scholarly architecture invite us to think deeply about how research idea are structured, validate, and translate into meaningful societal impact. It is indeed to honor to introduce Professor M. Tenmuri Ma'am, Professor in Finance at Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. With over 3 decades of exemplary academic and research experience, Professor Tenmuri Ma'am is a distinguished scholar in financial markets, financial modeling, corporate finance, and governance. She is widely recognized as a pioneer in applying artificial intelligence to financial market product prediction for more than 25 years. Her contributions span AI driven fraud detection models, ECG and fintech indices, carbon risk mitigation frameworks, robo advisory system, digital banking impact studies, and credit risk prediction model for bank. She currently heads the CAMS IITM FinTech Innovation Lab, fostering innovation and mentoring fintech startups while bringing academics and industry. An accomplished researcher, award winning academics, institution builder, and policy contributor, Professor Tenmurimam embodies the very essence of the scholarly architecture, structured thinking, analytical depth, ethical grounding, and transformative impact. Ma'am, your journey reflects how strength, knowledge framework, when combined with integrity and innovation, can shape institutions, influence policies, and empower future generation of researchers. We are truly privileged to have you with us today, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. As Peter Drucker, often regarded as the father of modern management, wisely said, knowledge has to be improved, challenged, and increased constantly, or it vanishes. This quote beautifully reflects the spirit of today's session, where we explore how scholarly knowledge is shaped and structured through research. It is now my pleasure to invite our distinguished speaker, Professor M. Tenmuli, Professor in Finance, IIT Madras, to lead us through her keynote on this impactful topic. We are excited to hear from you, ma'am.
So, good afternoon and nice to interact with you all through this particular mode. I think the topic that has been assigned to me is knowledge. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Yeah. So, knowledge structures and scholarly architecture. I think all of you say that each one of us, as a faculty, would like to become a scholar in whatever you're working on, whatever you're doing. And I think it's a journey which doesn't happen, which is actually a journey, and it doesn't happen in a day or two. And I think we all need to see in terms of how do we plan and how do you achieve what you want to. So before I get into the topic, maybe I thought one small thing which I can just share my experience. See, when I started my career as a faculty, I used to think what this should be my goal. So at that point in time, what I thought is, okay, when it comes to faculty, what are the roles that are assigned to us is for teaching, research. Then we have to do get some projects. And we have to do some administrative work also. So if I ask each one of you, okay, what is the role of each of these in the time that you have, 100% of your time? How much of time do you devote for teaching, research, projects, and then admin? Some answers from you, one of you.
Madam, 80% we do for teaching and probably fraction for the research and administration will be a remaining, madam. But nowadays, madam, nowadays administration 80% and teaching is 20%, madam.
Yeah. I think that's what I thought somebody is going to say, that I think all institutions are giving a lot of admin work to faculty more than teaching and research work.
But teaching, they learn from ChatGPT and other, madam. But administration, they are doing, madam.
Administration, okay. Yeah, I also agree that sometimes administration is something is increasing in terms of proportion. Yeah. But I think when one starts a career, initially one spends a lot of time in teaching, preparing for classes. I think that takes a lot of our time also, because you want to ensure that you become strong in the subjects that you teach, and sometimes that topic subject assigned also keep changing. You need to prepare a lot. But then over a period of time, I think I'm always try to speak for saying that you should focus on research. I always feel that unless and until you do research, you will not become a very good teacher also. So actually research helps us to develop into a better teacher, because you are looking into different areas, different domains. And the way I think research helps us to develop the ability to think in a different way. So I would say that the greatest learning that I got when I did my research is the approach towards the problem. So don't get stuck up with what the problem is. Identify why the problem has been, what has happened, what is the rationale, why it is, what is okay, what evidence is there pertaining to this, and then what can be done. So I think that approach of looking at a problem itself changes. And the way you're going to analyze it, I also want to ensure that I do a proper analysis, so that the inference that I get can be applied. I think this learning that we get while doing research, I think when you start doing more and more research, it becomes part of you, and it becomes your own character, and you start doing it in everything that you do also here. So in that sense, I think I would say that research is something definitely each one of you should focus, whether the college or the institution asks you or not. I think it's important that you should devote some time to do some research, because that helps you to become a great teacher, and also helps you to keep updating yourself, because the subject is also changing so much, and there must be some niche area in which you should be known. So I think research helps us to focus on what you like to be known in another 10 for 20 years. Because teaching will keep changing depending on the subjects, depending on the courses, depending on the level, the way what you teach will keep changing. But then research is something which will give you an identity for yourself. Yeah. So in that sense, I think you should focus on research, and also try to applying for some grants for some projects also sometimes helps us, because it provides you the flexibility to explore, because you've got a grant. So we must try with how do we go about applying for grants and then getting some research projects and then work on it. And if possible, if you can do some industry-based consulting or projects also, that's also good, because whatever you're doing is going to be useful in practice. So any work that you do which can be applied in practice, it makes more sense and gives a lot of satisfaction also. Should look at that. And administration, people think, why should I do administration? But it helps, because sometimes there used to be an argument. They say, no, let all the office people look at the administration, faculty need not get involved. But there are a lot of academic components involved in many of the decisions, in terms of whether it is a curriculum, whether it's a timetabling, scheduling, or is it in terms of trying to see in terms of whether there should be internship or not. All these things involves someone who needs to have an idea about the subject, and also that faculty level perspective is important. And in that sense, I think it always adds value when there's a faculty who looks at it and then takes a decision different from what a not normal office staff does. So in that sense, I think, yes, it is good, but it also helps us to understand the intricacies of how the organization is run. And later on, it prepares you to take a lot of leadership roles also. So administration is also required. Maybe the proportion will keep changing. And as you keep moving in the organization, I think admin work will be much more. Yeah, tell me. Yes? So admin work increases over a period of time. That's what I was saying. Okay. Let's say what I used to do is, at least every year I must have, teaching is something which the institution says I have to do. In research, I ensure that, okay, I must have some students whom I do some research guidance. I should have some research papers, at least one paper a year, at least I should publish. Then one project I must do, one training program or one FDP or one executive development program I should know. I should apply for one project at least and try to get at least one project. I always have one project always ongoing, and also take up some admin work also. So maybe I think as a person, start looking at, okay, I have one and everything. And then when you look back, I think you'll have a big, huge CV, which is built up with all whatever you have done. And you're also grown with the area and also in the subject and become much more scholarly also here. So it's something, this is something which you should keep a goal. Okay, at the end of this year, what is it I have? I must do something. Teaching, yes, 2 subjects, 4 subjects in a year. Okay, research, at least 1 paper in A category journal or B category journal or C category journal. Keep your vision for that. And also I should get at least 1 project in hand. And also I should guide 1 research student. Okay, if the college does not permit, still, I think you could try doing some guidance of taking some of the projects of the MBA or the graduate students also. And then you can work on some projects which can be converted to a research paper later. So try to see, okay, I must do at least 1 at the end of 1 year. And also look at, get some projects, then again, apply for projects together or as a group of faculty, and also involved in some admin work also here again. So this is something which helps you to develop into a scholarly person over a period of time here. If you have any questions, I'll take up. We will proceed. Yeah, I'll just give you 1 minute. Yeah. So anything you want me to touch upon? What are you expecting from the session? I think all of you are silent. As faculty, I think we don't like in the audience is silent, no?
That's what.
Yeah. So I also look for something from you. What is it you wanted to know? Not sure. Okay, I thought I'll just share some of my experience of research. What does it I look for? And how do I ensure that my research is something will be good? Some tips alone, I thought I'll just share with you. So always whenever doing any research, I always feel that each one of you should focus on trying to develop a conceptual framework. Maybe you can look at in terms of coming up with a written or a virtual presentation in terms of how, what is it they're going to do? What are the variables? What are the concepts? What is it you're going to test it out? I think putting it graphically, you begin with what you want to do. I think that gives us much more clarity also. Okay, now what should I look at in terms of when I develop my conceptual framework here again? So maybe we can look in terms of, okay, it comes from the research problem that you choose, whether theoretical or practical interest. You have to be clear before deciding about what assumptions are there, which you're not going to question. With assumption, I take it for granted, so I'm not going to question. What is my objectives here? What you want to know? And I think it's also important that you look at in terms of literature review. So for developing a conceptual framework, you should have done a proper literature review also, so that you critically review it and then based on that identify, come up with the overall framework. See, initially it's something, it becomes like a small sketchy one, but then as we keep doing more literature review and the fine-tuning our objectives, I think the framework actually develops. And I've seen that normally what I do is I prepare the concept at the beginning, and at the end of after doing the research, I also try to see what really happened, what worked, what was the relationship. So it helps me to get some clarity in terms of how we went about doing it and then what really emerged out of it also. So that's why when I begin with after my research questions, always I end with my conceptual framework, and then also try to see in terms of later on at the end, when at the end of the conclusion chapter, I also say, okay, this is how I began, and what is the finding, what was the relationship, what hypothesis worked, how hypothesis did not work, and what I could prove, etc. So that way, I always feel that for a good research, I think you should start beginning with a sketchy conceptual framework and then start developing it further and further. Sometimes you keep on revisiting. I mean, you get some results and then you find that you get the data and you find that the results are not matching with what you expected. You again revise, relook at it, redefine the questions again. And sometimes it's like a cyclical process also. And then you try to revise your conceptual framework here again. Whether it's quantitative research or qualitative research, both envisages a framework here. But in the case of a concept, the qualitative one, normally I think you look in terms of coming up with I don't know, automatically it's moving. Yeah, okay. So for example, here, this is actually a conceptual framework I'm just giving here, where we wanted to find out the financial services system success model. So we want to see the effect of infrastructure quality, service quality, information quality, and system quality on the user satisfaction and then the effect on the net benefits one gets in a bank. So they come up with the software. They came up with the IT system there for use in the banks, and we are trying to assign. I want to see what is the benefit of it, and when to what extent the infrastructure quality or system quality or the information quality or service quality enhances this. And so directly finding it, we also thought first, and we need to look at in terms of are they satisfied? All the people who are using the system, are they happy, satisfied with it, and whether it is resulting in any benefits? Yeah. So based on this, we came up with about the various hypotheses which you want to test. And then started looking at how to measure infrastructure quality, how to measure service quality, how to measure information quality, how to measure service quality, system quality, how to measure user satisfaction, and how to measure net benefits, identify the various parameters, and then started developing them, collecting the, we did prepare a questionnaire, collected the data, and then try to see in terms of what is the final model there again. So that's how you begin with some framework, and then that helps you to start moving forward also. So when sometimes people always think, what do I do? People want one, day one, you don't get an answer, but sometimes you start somewhere, begin with some peripheral model framework like this, and then keep modifying it. So here I brought in user satisfaction, maybe something else more also is going to be there. Or here I brought in only 4 parameters on the left-hand side in terms of the system. There may be other parameters also. So through the literature review, I keep on adding it and trying to refine my framework. And then that helps us to do a good work also. So one is about conceptual framework, which I thought I'll just tell you. Another thing is a good research also depends on to what extent we're doing a literature review. Yeah? So a proper literature review actually helps us to have some clarity in terms of why we are doing it. So why should we do a literature review? One is to identify a suitable topic here. Sometimes people always, when they meet me, say, can you tell me what topic to work on? I cannot suggest a topic just like that. Maybe I can only think of problem areas where there may be scope. I mean, these are some issues that we are facing. Is it really a problem? Is there any already existing solution? Can we find a new solution here again? So through literature review provides you the answer, and then you identify whether people have already done it or not done it, and also helps us to position also where my work is. Sometimes I do a methodological analysis to see in terms of what is the entire scope here, but then I am going to focus on only one aspect of the entire research. I'm not going to take all variables. I'm not going to look at all parameters. I'm going to do only one small part of it also. So the literature review also helps us to become more focused also here. And it also brings in clarity in terms of how my work will add to the existing. Yeah. So it's something, literature tells us in terms of how, okay, something is already there, and then also what is the something that's a gap there, and what I'm trying to do also. So always when we're looking at the literature review, I think you should look at is the work based on any underlying theory? What was the idea that led to this? What are the hypotheses they have? What concepts they've used them? And then also start looking at, okay, this is what the particular paper has done. What are the other theoretical approaches related to this topic? What other methods have been used? So that you have a clarity in terms of what is already there. Before I try to think in terms of what I want to do, I think literature review is a very important component that you need to look at for. So it helps us to choose, as I said, the first is the choosing the right topic. I think this is where sometimes people also get stuck up, because if you want to publish in a good journal, I think it's also important you choose the right topic also there. So I think it's basically a foundation, and also do a more detailed literature review, and that helps you to choose the right topic also. Sometimes I always feel that you should review it critically. So the more critically that you review, I think you'll be able to identify the gap there. And whatever you're doing, something, it should be related to something where you can always say, I'm going to be a specialist in this area after doing the work there again. Look for some niche, something like it makes a difference. And sometimes you say, people say, no, it's not possible. Means why not I try? Is this possible? And then start looking in terms of what are the ways it can be done. So because research is something for us to look at something which is new, for which there's no solution has been there earlier. I think suppose currently we are doing something on fraud and fraud management respect to banking solutions. So if there's some fraudulent activity where somebody has trying to hack your address details and then trying to do it. So can we come up with a mechanism by which they will not be able to do any further transactions? Can we develop a prototype or a model there? So there's something like a practical issue is there, and then by which you're trying to say, can I develop a framework or a model, or develop a prototype or an algorithm which will help me to handle this particular issue there again. And of course, it's also important that when you choose a topic, it's good to also interact with others, share your views, and then see in terms of what you should do and how should you proceed further on this also. Because talking to somebody also gives us some clarity. Otherwise, by thinking by yourself, you don't get clarity. But when you tell this is what I want to do somebody, you get a lot of clarity in it. So that's why when my research students are working, I always tell them to come and make a presentation. Okay, give me a presentation of what you have done. What is the paper you read? What is the summary? Make a presentation. So the more and more they start doing it, it also they also get clarity. And in the process, I can also give them inputs in terms of how to improve the work or become more focused there again. So of course, one more thing also is begin with some research questions. It may be some issue pertaining to the business. Being a person in management and finance, I always feel that looking at what are the issues in business, economy, I think you can look at that and then formulate some research questions and see if there's any existing solution for that. Otherwise, think in terms of how you can do it also. Yeah, I think that's something is always important here. Because look at in terms of various library search, your own institutional library or various other libraries that are there. Refer to other libraries, visit libraries also. Or also look at the publications pertaining to the various journals also. Yeah. Even conference proceedings, previous studies, reports, all these things provide you a good scope for you to do a literature review there. Yeah. Any question that you have? Yeah. Somebody? So maybe when you read any paper, you also need to look at in terms of is the work done properly? Are they convincing? And what is the quality of the work? Does it contribute to the knowledge? Start evaluating. So I think the moment you be very critical, I think you will be able to see in terms of how to define your objective also. Sometimes people think literature review is just trying to prepare a list of studies. No, it's not a series of paragraphs for each reserve. No, I think you always have to look at in terms of doing a critical evaluation of the thing. And then when you're putting literature, put them chronologically and then group them on the basis of concept, on the basis of themes, etc. So that it helps us to have some clarity in terms of how to structure the literature that you have collected here again. And when you're doing literature, we avoid plagiarism because sometimes you just copy pasting nowadays, immediately it gets highlighted here. So it's always important for you to write it in your own words there. Of course, a lot of databases and sources are there, like Google Scholar, Social Sciences Network, or MPRA, or JSTOR, Scopus, Science Direct, Springer, Emerald Publication, JLA, Palgrave, Oxford Journals. So the sources are plenty. You can look at it. And then when you look at a paper, I'll say that some tips in terms of how to read a good paper, research paper. Sometimes the main challenge that people feel is sometimes you want us to publish in top tier journals, but then it's very difficult to read the paper itself. So normally from the introduction, maybe you can look at, okay, what was the purpose of the main point? Just note it down. What are the hypotheses they're trying to test? How is the work different from prior work here? What is the contribution they are trying to make here? Just note down these points alone, no? And methodology, just see what sources from which they got the data. How do they measure the concept of the variable? What is the sample? What is the population? What's the size? What method they've used? And how do they choose the respondent? And when it comes to analysis, okay, what are the tools? Yeah? Come again? Yeah. So choose the sample and then also to see in terms of what is the procedure to be followed to choose this respondent also here, and identify when it comes to data analysis, I think your tools and techniques should match your objective. For every objective, which tool and technique I have to use, choose appropriate ones. Don't go by what others are saying. I must use all complicated data analytical tools. No. For your problem, which you just based on the type way in which the data is measured, identify what will be more relevant and appropriate and choose those tool techniques only. And having identified this thing, you also understand more about the technique, understand what are the assumptions of the technique. Okay, regression is a good model to analyze. So I'm going to use a time series ARIMA model. Means I need to understand in terms of what the model is, what are the characteristics, when do I use it, and see whether my data matches that, and then only apply. Don't blindly apply, because nowadays programs and software will just give you an output irrespective of the way you have defined it. So it's always good that you understand the technique, understand the assumptions, how the variables should be measured if you want to do the analysis, and then analyze it, and then look in terms of how to interpret the results here again. So look at in terms of here also, what are the findings of the objectives and where they accepted or rejected the hypothesis also here. Maybe for us as a researcher, we also start looking a little more. Okay, what was the implications? What are the contributions there? Are they contributing to theory? Are they contributing to practice? How are they differing from the earlier studies? Is it appropriate that the findings are more robust than the earlier studies or not? You start looking into it so that you will also be able to understand the paper matter. And then try to look at, okay, what is your opinion of the paper? Was the paper worth reading? Did you learn anything? What other questions can be asked? What are the weaknesses, the scope for improving the paper also? I think using these tips, you can prepare a small, for every paper you have one sheet and then make note of it. No, I think it becomes a good summary, and it brings in more clarity, because after you read, you must remember. No, best way to remember is have these notes. That helps us to when you're writing also there later. See, for example, here is an example I've given here. Huang Lu says that he examined the effect of macroeconomic factors on bond volatility on short-term, medium-term, and long-term bonds. And they observed that index help in advertisement, employment rate, index of industrial production, nationalization of purchasing managers index, all positive impact in short-term, medium-term, and long-term volatility. But monetary factors as fund rates, non-borrowed reserves, M2, they're all not positively affect the short-term bond volatility around. So, but however, they have not considered factors, macro factors like forex reserve, exchange rate, LIBOR, while modeling. And while modeling volatility, they did not capture the effect of the past values in the model and use realized volatility measure and not conditional volatility. So you're trying to relate the work of Huang Lu, trying to say what they have done, what is the gap, and why what they has not done, and how it could be better. So hence, I wanted to investigate the effect of macro factors on conditional volatility for these markets, etc. So it's always do a review and try to see how to translate into a research question effectively. Of course, for data collection, you have different tools. A questionnaire is one common thing, and or an interview. Depending on the purpose, you can go in for it. Or otherwise, if it's a second data set, do desk research. But when it comes to questionnaire, some tips is, I think, before preparing the questionnaire, decide what is the objective here and what type of research you want to do, whether you're going to do an exploratory or a descriptive study, causal study, because that decides the type of research design that you wanted to use for a study also. And what is your idea about a sample, and what probable analysis that can be done with respect to this. So the main objective of the questionnaire is to ensure that it's not to see, sometimes if you don't ask the right question, nobody will answer also. And it's not a thing to show your ability or capability. Here, you always remember questionnaire should speak self-sufficient and also help the audience to respond to it here again. That's more important here again. And then in that case, we'll find that there'll not be much of any errors also here again. Okay, so I think in terms of steps for preparing, I always think of these steps here. One is specify what information needed, what is method that you're going to use for collecting the data, how many individuals you're going to contact here. Okay, if suppose respondents are not able to answer, what do we do? How do we structure it there? And decide on the question structure, whether you're going to go to alternative type, open-ended questions, or you're going to give some all options for them to choose. And decide we should also ensure that you are going to ask the right questions there. Question wording is also important. And arrange the questions in a proper flow also. And also it's important in a question as you also take care of your font, size, the way you're presenting it, etc. And having prepared it, always do a pre-testing. Pre-testing is use similar respondents for your study and then do a pre-testing, and based on the pre-test results, finalize the questionnaire. So always they say a survey is only as good as the questions it asks. So if the questions are wrong, the whole survey also becomes questionable. So in research also, I think this really applies. I think in order, okay, nature of questions. Maybe, I think these things, I think you must also be familiar because all of you must be doing some work already. Avoid double-barreled, avoid leading questions, avoid loaded questions, avoid implicit alternatives, avoid implicit assumptions, avoid generalization, avoid complexity, avoid burdensome questions, and what is more important is you make the question, it's very interesting for them to answer here again. Then having collected the data, I think always people look in terms of, okay, how am I going to analyze the data here again? So I think sometimes I see that a lot of use is there and misuse is there for the tools that is used for, technique that's used for analysis. For example, I want to find out the relationship between job satisfaction and employees and demographic variables. Which statistical tool can I use? I look for some answers from you. Participants, please. Any suggestion there? Which statistical tool can I use here?
Can you repeat the question, madam?
Are you able to see the slide? No?
Yes, madam.
I want to examine the relationship between job satisfaction of employees and the age or sex or experience of the employee.
Madam, can you use correlation for this?
Correlation, yeah. Correlation tell us whether they are related or not. Okay. Then what else?
Can you use ANOVA?
Okay, ANOVA.
Can you use to find the different variants actually?
See, now it depends on. See, first one you said correlation.
Okay.
It is going to be satisfaction and age. Satisfaction, okay, you have a questionnaire and you convert them into scores based on the answers. The scales are, use a rating scale, convert to scores. Age, if you ask the age category of the respondent, I cannot do what But if you ask what the actual age, then I can do it. Yeah.
I can do with the experience and job satisfaction.
Huh?
Can you do with the experience and job satisfaction?
No. What you can do is, if it is only, we have asked the respondent to give age in the form of category to which they belong to, less than 40, 40 to 50, or 50 to 60, etc. Then what you have is only the categorical. So there I can, if you want to still look at relationship, I can take job satisfaction and age and do a cross tabulation and then do a chi-square test there. And then look at the so now based on the data, the way it is measured, whether it fulfills the requirements of a tool or technique, based on which I have to choose the technique there again. So choice of a technique is dependent on my purpose here. Of course, sex is also going to be going to male or female is again category. I cannot use correlation. I have to go for chi-square only. Experience also, it depends on whether you measure it in category or actual. Then based on which you can go in for correlation or you can go in for category-wise impact also. So I think this is what I see here. Yeah, fine. So can I use even Z test, Z test, F test, ANOVA? I think one of you is saying ANOVA. ANOVA doesn't tell you relation, but tells you are they different. If suppose male and female is there, and then you're looking in terms of it's looking at the job satisfaction, it will tell you whether the two categories are similar or are they different here. So that's what ANOVA tells us. ANOVA tells us the sample of mean of both male and female, are they same or are they different? So that can be known through ANOVA here. So T set, Z test, and F test I can use when I have only two groups. But if I have more than two groups to compare, then ANOVA is suitable here. And if the data is not on a continuous scale, if it is like category, then in that case, I can use only chi-squared. Correlation can be used only when it is quantified there. Factor analysis, I want to group the independent variables before trying to examine it, then I can use factor analysis also. I can also use regression, putting in all these variables together and see in terms of what is the impact here again on self-satisfaction here. So that way you have to look at it in terms of what is the purpose, what are the options available, and based on my purpose, I'll choose appropriate one and then try to see how to proceed further on those lines here. So basically, when you're looking after collecting data, you need to bring the data into order, summarize the data, and then come up with your analysis plan, analyze data, validate the results, and interpret it. So depending on the purpose, you can choose a technique. Whether if you're summarizing the data, I can use descriptives like mean, median, mode, standard, correlation, coefficient of variation, etc. If I want to examine variability, then I go for t-test, z-test, z-test, f-test, etc. There's a relationship between variables between correlation or chi-square test, depending on how the variable is measured. Estimation of population parameter, again, I can look at in terms of past experience, where we are trying to see in terms of what is the parameter. And then if you want to compare groups, then you may have to go in for ANOVA, or more than two groups, then I will go in for discriminant analysis or logistic regression. If you want to look at interrelation among variables, I will go in for using factor analysis. If you want to see whether my results of sample is valid enough, then I go for test of validity or test of significancy. So the point I want to take is, there are a lot of tools and techniques, but depending on your purpose, identify what options are available and then narrow down the most appropriate one. Okay, when I mean validation, what do you mean by validation? Okay, I've done the study, I've collected it, done the analysis, but then how do I ensure that my results are robust here again? So for example, I thought I'll just take one thing from my own work here. So this is something like I did a literature review and found out what is the cash held by companies in these countries. So various studies have already been done. Prior research shows that, especially US and Japan, the cash ratio held is 8.6 and Japan is holding more cash. Similarly, you look at in terms of Germany, again, Pickowicz and Williamson, in 12.7% is a cash ratio. So now having seen this, I think the point tells us in terms of what is there. Now in my study, I'd like to see, okay, am I focusing on India and what is the average cash ratio? So then it becomes easy for us to understand whether my market is similar to that of other markets, is there any parity, and which of them are more closer, similar to this, to India, and then can I draw the lessons from there also. So, of course, we also try to see in terms of what is the value of a firm increases with increase in the value of the level of cash. And we did try to do a test to find out whether there's increase in the value of cash by even by 1 rupee. They say the dollar is than, it's much less than a dollar in countries with poor investor protection here. Yeah. So, for example, we did find that value of $1 is $0.91, and for about 33 countries here. For other, it was for 0.94, or it was 1.23, which is different. Different for various companies also. So maybe you can look at one more thing also you can do is based on the studies that you have reviewed, you can say these are the variables that I use for the model building. And what I expect, theoretically, I expect to have positive effect and negative effect here. What is the finding of our study and what is the finding of similar studies here? And so this will also tell us in terms of what is unique and how are we different from both of the others here again. Yeah, sorry. One more. So can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So can this way, we look at the previous studies, what they have done, how they have measured, what is their finding, and what is my finding. So what the theoretical expect, then based on my study, I can put it what is thing, and then also understand in terms of why it is similar or different, what is the contribution, etc. I think this type of tabulation, sometimes I have learned a lot. No, sometimes you do a lot of literature is there, but I don't know where do we stand. Are we similar? Are we different? But this table always helps me to understand in terms of how are they similar and how are they different. And I'll add my findings also, and then try to see should I do some further improvement or not. So for example, here I've done it, and then I added my study, what I've done. Apart from these variables, I look at other characteristics also. So extra characteristics are there. What is my expectation and what we found at the previous studies here. So I think this type of validation also helps us to understand in terms of whether the study is doing robust or not. One more thing, in recent times, people talk about test of robustness. I think we can do test of robustness either by way of trying to change the way you measure a concept, the key variables, or use a different algorithm for testing it, and then try to see in terms of how it is better. So one more thing I think you also need to know is, I think each one of you should know what is your citation index here. So index of citations, something is there. Scopus also publish citations. And then you should also see in terms, it's always important to know in terms of how many citations you have. I think gradually, I think everyone will be evaluated based on the citations they have. So please try to ensure that your work is being cited by others. And also the one which has been receiving repetitive citation is always rated higher there again. So you must look at in terms of the citation index and have your, and then start building it. I think when you look at in terms of history, you may start with 0, but then as you keep gradually growing, you see in terms of whether in what category you are into it. Another thing is concept of impact factor is something which you need to do, because the quality of the journal depends on the impact factor of the journal here again. But when people say, what does this impact factor means? People ask. Say, if suppose there's a journal has got an impact factor of 3 in a year, then it means that the papers published in 2018, 19, and 20 have received, on average, 3 citations in this year. So that way it is relative here. So, and then you try to calculate the impact factor there. Yeah. So another thing also in each of you should focus on is have a search index. If you, I don't know how many of you have registered in Google Scholar, how many of you are in IMMERGOGY portal, and how many of you are having your ResearchGate one. If you have not done it, create it, because it's important that you need to have your own web page where you can put in it. And as and when you publish, please do keep asking people in terms of trying to update it there also here. That's something is very important here. So what does a H index indicates? H index actually indicates that the productivity, to what extent the paper, the H index reflects that both number of publications and number of citations in the publications during the particular period, the highest here again. So they're looking for papers which have been cited in other papers at least a certain number of times, then in that case they are rated to be better here again. Of course, one more thing is, another thing people always talk about is ethics in research. Nowadays, if we are going to do some data collection involving individuals, we have to get approval from the ethics committee that you're going to do the data collection here. So please follow the norms. If you're not if suppose it's not been done, people will not accept your paper also later. So it is becoming very mandatory that you need to follow the ethical concerns also with respondents here. And look at it, ensure that you collect the appropriate data, ensure there are no particular ethical issues. Try to do the proper analysis. Don't be in a hurry. Don't outsource. Always do it by yourself. Don't make statisticians richer by way of giving a data for analysis. You yourself can do it, and in the process, you learn, and then it's always you see that we become stronger as we keep growing. Sometimes I feel when the scholar comes in, initially you don't know ABCD of it, but then the 4th year and 5th year, they only talk about tools and techniques. They forget the subject. They forget the rationale, they forget the theory, and you have to tell them always link it to both. Then only is always important. Of course, ensure proper analysis being done, and most important is avoid plagiarism. So this is something is very critical when you are doing your research here. So these are some views in terms of how we can do good research here. I made some small tips there. I think good research helps us to contribute to literature. Another one is sometimes you also find there's applicability in practice here again. And I would say that when it comes to research, it's always a joy. You should never do it because somebody asked you to do it. You should enjoy doing it. Then in that get really fun, no? Then sometimes at every stage you discover that something new for you to learn. So that's why I always feel that doing research keeps us more updated, more stronger, and then also helps us to achieve our goals of trying to do something and contribute to the society also here again. So just say that research is a joy, enjoy doing it, and I'm sure that you'll grow with your research also here. So now I'm open to questions from your side.
Madam, can I have a small question, madam?
Yeah, tell me. Yes.
Madam, if you want to have a good research, how many theories can we choose for our research topic?
How many theories?
Theories, yeah.
See, it depends on your research problem. Sometimes it may be one or two theory which is relevant. Choose the relevant ones, and then are you going to test the theory? Or are you going to accept the theory? So it
No,
also
we're going to
depends
accept
on.
the theory. No, we're going to accept the theory, but accept
Are
the
you going to
theory, but
find?
we are the same. I'm going to frame a model.
So you are based on the theory, you are developing the model. Then in that case, it's only an assumption. You're not testing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So only when you're trying to see, normally when you're doing it, so what you always find is the theories actually gives the idea in terms of formulating a problem also, formulating your conceptual framework, etc.
Yes,
So then
madam.
you don't question. There are other theories which help you to see in terms of why this variable should influence it. Resource dependency theory says, okay, why family firms behave in a particular way. So when I look at the agency theory, it tells me how the conflict of interest comes between ownership held by family firms and the others. So I use the theory and then try to build the rationale, and that helps give me a reason as to why I should examine the effect of this. So it may be one or two theories, multiple theories also can be there. It depends on your
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insightful and intellectually enriching session. Your lecture offered valuable perspectives on how knowledge structures are formed and how scholarly architecture plays a crucial role in strengthening research practices. The clarity with which you connected theory and application has greatly enhanced our understanding. We are truly grateful for your time and wisdom. Now, we would love to hear from our participants. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask directly. Let us take a few moments to engage with our resource person. Ma'am, there are a few questions in the chat box as well.
It's okay. Wait, let me see this. See, when identifying a suitable research problem, okay, what topic from literature, what indicates as the area is mature? It depends on the topic also. Sometimes within a mature area, you can find some gap and then work on it also. So recently, I saw a study on whether does a dividend theory hold good. 2024, I saw dividend theory always been there a long time back, and then why are doing? But the way they done the study, the way they approached it and looked at it is totally different. So it's actually a mature area where a lot of work has already been done, but they chose a different angle, different approach to it. And then the way you do it's totally different. So I think nothing can just something like it's going to limit you, but based on the work you have to see in terms of where some new thing is emerging, both in an emerging area or even in a mature area. Maybe a simple, not necessarily always be a complicated one. Choose a simple one and then proceed. from review specific, what qualities immediately signal a strong, well-structured literature review? So, see, when you're looking at the literature review, it should be relevant work. You must be able to summarize the key core papers, core contributors. So, suppose if I know there is a paper coming on mergers and acquisitions pertaining to valuation, I know these are the authors that they are. At least you should have cited all of them. You should have referred it and built on it. So people also look at in terms of whether you have quoted all the classical research pertaining to the particular area, and now you are able to identify the research gap properly here again. I think that's something which always they're looking for when you're looking at the here. And if if you can summarize it and then link it to your work and bring out the gap clearly, then in that case it's true. If you can convince a reader what is the story behind why you are doing it, I think then your paper will go for review also. That's more important. Okay, does structuring knowledge, scholarly literature differ from general knowledge? I think scholarly work is very important. When you already look at it, it's important that you come up with something new and innovative. And then when people start using it always, it becomes a general model there. So depending on how people are start using the whole thing, the output of the scholarly work, that becomes very common later on when applied extensively there. Structuring knowledge reinforcing academic syllabus. I'm not very clear what it is asked. Maybe you're looking at in terms of because you're going to come up with a proper structure, it is going to reinforce the silos. No. See, but structuring helps us to bring in clarity. So, and in the process, it can maybe in the way of structuring, I can group it into silos, group it into various heads, and then also try to see what is the gap there. And also define, I'm not going to use these silos, I'm going to only use the specific silos to define the scope of the work also. That also helps. And for niche, how narrow to narrow, especially PhD funded research. So niche is something which is unique, where you're trying to look at something which people are not done. It can be narrow also. Same time, it is going to have some more application. Then in that case, it's fine, no problem. Yeah. So thank you, and it's nice interacting with you all. Yeah. Wish you all enjoy doing research and have fun and have a great research journey.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you share me the phone number or email if you have any come across any question which I ask you, madam?
Yeah. My mail ID is mtm@iitm.ac.in.
Ma'am, put it in the chat box, madam.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat box. Yeah.
Is there any questions? Anybody? Oh, if that is all, thank you all for your active participation today. Now I invite Dr. N. Prabha, Assistant Professor, Department of Microbiology, to deliver the closing remarks for this session. Over to you, ma'am.
So, as we conclude this enriching session on knowledge structure and scholarly architecture, we are reminded that scholarship is not merely the accumulation of information, but the thoughtful design of insight. Just as architecture transforms space into purposeful structure, scholarly rigor transforms knowledge into meaningful contribution. Professor Mori has eloquently emphasized that intellectual growth demands clarity of framework, integrity of method, and coherence of vision. When knowledge is carefully structured, it not only advances individual competence but also strengthens the collective academic ecosystem. Let us carry forward the commitment to build framework that endure uh, research that resonates, and scholarship that serves society. On behalf of all the participants, I express our heartfelt appreciation to Professor Tenmuri for her enlightening perspectives and intellectually stimulating presentation. We are inspired to meaningfully integrate these insights into our academic pursuits and personal practice. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation on a very crucial time. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your thoughtful conclusion. Your words have beautifully wrapped up today's experience. Before we wind up, we kindly request all the participants to fill out the feedback form with your valuable feedbacks that will help us enhance future sessions. The link has been posted in the chat box. We look forward to see you all tomorrow. Until then, stay curious, stay connected, and thank you once again for being with us today. Have a wonderful evening.
Ma'am, tomorrow is going to be offline over now. Please confirm it. Ma'am, please share the feedback form so that we can fill up and send you back. And just confirm whether tomorrow going to be offline or online, madam. These two questions.